Thank you everyone for joining today. We appreciate you taking the time to be on our Streamlining Nonprofit Financial Management with Sage Intacct webinar. Just a brief agenda of what we'll be going through today. We'll be talking a quick introduction and overview. Then I'm going to take you through the demo where we'll talk through specifics of managing multi-entities, including consolidations and reporting. We'll also be talking through audit trails, and we'll be talking through workflows to streamline your approval processes. And then we'll talk through why nonprofits like yourselves are choosing Sage Intacct. And then lastly, we're going to save some time at the end for questions and discussions. If you do have any questions as we go through today's demo, please place them in the Q&A since we have set aside that time at the end. And we'll also be sending out a recording of the webinar. My name is Jane, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm our Sage Intacct Consulting Manager at CBIZ CompuData, and I manage our Sage Intacct practice. We're responsible for everything around Sage Intacct implementations, from business process reviews, project plan, timeline development, all the way into the implementation and configuration of Sage Intacct. And we also handle post-sales support. I'm a CPA with 5 years of experience in Intacct, about half of that in implementing, and then I actually started out my Intacct journey as an end user. So a little bit about me. If you jump into the next slide for me, Michelle. Thank you. So a little bit about our Sage practice. We are a leading Sage partner with over 30 years of experience migrating and implementing Sage solutions. We have a team of certified Sage Intacct consultants that are dedicated to supporting all types of organizations, including the nonprofit group of clients. And we've also been recognized as an award-winning VAR for 20 consecutive years. We boast 98% customer satisfaction and accolades from Bob Scott Top 100 VARs, Bob Scott VAR Stars, and the MSP 501, just to name a few. So I think now we can go ahead and transition into the live demo. Let me go ahead and steal the screen share here. And then, Michelle, once I do, if you could just confirm that you're able to see my Intacct screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to cover multi-entity and some reporting around that. We're also going to be covering consolidations as a piece of that multi-entity demo. And then we'll talk audit trails. And then we'll get into just one example of how we can streamline approvals in Intacct. And like I mentioned, just save any of those. We'll have 5 to 10 minutes of time for questions at the end. So please write down your questions or just plug them into the Q&A as you think of them. And then I'll come back to those at the very end in the last 5 to 10 minutes. So in Intacct, we have the ability to have multi-entity environments. So in this particular demo environment here, I've got 8 to 10 entities. We'll really focus on these 3 during the demonstration: the foundation, the community center, and the clinic. If I'm someone like a CFO or a controller, I might need to see a holistic view of all of my entities, and I'm able to do that with the multi-entity features within Intacct. So what I mean by that is, if I'm a CFO or controller and I come into a dashboard, for example, I can come into this dashboard, run it for a given time period, and I can see a holistic view of my organization, which would include my foundation, my community center, my clinic, any of my other entities. Also, as that CFO or controller, I can filter to a specific entity. So if I wanted, for example, to just see activity in the foundation, I could filter by the foundation and view just activity for that particular entity. Now, a question I get from a lot of folks is, if I'm not a CFO or a controller and I just want to restrict someone to a foundation, or maybe to the foundation and the community center, can I do that? And you certainly can. If I duplicate this tab here and I come into my list of users, I'll see that I can come into Carla Grace's user, for example, and if I need to, I can restrict Carla Grace to just the foundation, or maybe just the foundation and the clinic. If I do this, when Carla Grace logs in, she's not going to have this holistic view like the CFO or controller does. She's just going to see the foundation and the clinic that I've restricted her to. So we have the ability with Intacct to give users access to as many entities as we need them to have. And if we need to restrict them, then we can certainly do that. Let's briefly jump into multi-entity and how we can use that in reporting. So I'm going to come out to my reports, and I'm going to take a look at a statement of activities here. So we'll just focus on this statement of activities comparative. And to start, I'm just going to run this for 2021. And this is going to pull up my statement of activities. So at the moment, I've taken the statement of activities and I have expanded my actual column by entity. So I'm able to see a holistic view of every entity in my organization expanded by each entity's activity in the columns. If I wanted to come in and get rid of that expanded view, maybe it's a little too messy and I don't want to view it that way, I can quickly come in and choose not to expand. And let's take a look at what this looks like. Now, with a couple clicks, I can see the entire organization's actuals in my statement of activities. So I have the ability, since we have that entity set up as a dimension, to break out any column of a financial report and see it by entity. The other thing that I can do, so I'll go ahead and save these changes. The other thing I can do here is I can run this comparative financial, and maybe I don't want to see a holistic view. Maybe I want to run this report for a specific entity. The same way I was able to do that on a dashboard, I can do that in an individual report, and I can run this for the clinic or the foundation. So I'll click OK here, and now we'll see these numbers dropped pretty significantly because now I'm just viewing this statement of activities for that single entity. Outside of financial reporting, one of the other great features of inter-entity within Intacct is our ability to automatically create inter-entity transactions. So what I mean by that is, let's say that we create an accounts payable bill for the foundation, but we pay it with a bank account owned by a different entity. If I come in and take a look at one of these bills here, so here we have an accounts payable bill, and this bill is for the foundation. Now, when we ultimately made the payment on this bill, we paid it with a bank account that's owned by the community center. So here we're seeing the debit to our accounts payable, relieving that AP, and the credit to our cash. But what we're also seeing is an inter-entity journal. So down here, this was an automated journal. I did not have to manually enter this. And the reason for that is that with multi-entity and Intacct, there are mapping tables set up that look like this. And with these mapping tables, we establish what the inter-entity receivable and payable accounts should be between various entities. And then anytime we create an inter-entity transaction, whether that be an accounts payable bill or a reclass or an AR invoice, the inter-entity impact of that journal is automated. So that's what we're seeing here. Yes, we relieved the AP and we paid out the cash, but this piece is automated. The other thing to mention is that with Intacct, we have the ability to create consolidations. So let me just quickly jump into another environment here just to take a quick look at this, and then we'll jump into audit trails. So if you're an NFP that needs to consolidate, there are options for both domestic and global consolidations. So I have a separate module here that allows me to run consolidations on any given period. And with these consolidations, I'm establishing the accounts that I need to eliminate, the entities that I need to consolidate, all for the purpose of being able to eventually run a consolidated financial statement. So if we take a look at one of these in this environment, I've got my 7 entities. I've got my 7 entities up here at the top, but then I can see there's an additional elimination entity where my consolidations automatically eliminated my intercompany receivables and my intercompany payables. So we've got those multi-entity features, but we also have consolidations if your organization has a high volume of eliminations that need to be made. Let's go ahead and jump into audit trails next. And like I said, any questions on multi-entity or consolidations, please go ahead and plug them into the Q&A, and I'll cover those in the last 5 to 10 minutes. So throughout Intacct, we've got robust audit trails, and we're going to take a look at a couple examples of those today. So I'm going to come into an accounts payable bill, and I'll click view here. And what I'm going to see is if I click view audit trail in the top right of this bill, I'm going to see every action that has been taken on this bill, and that's going to give me detail of the date and time that that action was made, the action that was made, whether that was a modification or a creation, the person that took that action, and then if there were changes made, it'll show me what those changes were. So in this case, earlier today, I updated this field from bill number B12345 to bill number B123456. And I updated the description up here. So these audit trails will capture every aspect of that. Another place we're going to see these, just to see another example, is in our general journal entries. So if I come into this accrual entry here and view the audit trail, I'm going to see every action that was taken on this journal, including modifications, creations, no audited changes, and it'll show me a before and after. So here, previously there wasn't an attachment, then I did add an attachment. The other thing to note outside of transactions is that Intacct also keeps an audit trail on any reports. So if I come into my statement of activities here, and let's just see if this one has an audit trail. So on my statement of activities, I also have an audit trail of any changes that have been made to this particular report. Also, just basic actions like printing or exporting the report will show up in this audit trail. And throughout all these audit trails, we're just seeing my name, but if a variety of users had made those changes, we would see every change made by every user. Another spot we'll see an audit trail is in approvals, but I'm going to take a look at that in our final bullet at the end. Outside of viewing audit trails on specific transactions, we also in Intacct have a few audit reports we can run. So one example of this is our audit event report. And let's just go ahead and run this for a specific user. So let's say we want to see all the events that I have done. So in this audit event report, it's going to show me any changes to standard transactions and records. It will also list all users who have added, edited, or deleted an object with the date and time that that change occurred. So here I ran this report just for myself. I could run this holistically for the entire organization. If I removed my name, I can run it for a specific day or group of days. So if I wanted to just see all activity that's happened in this environment on 10/17, I could certainly do that. And that's just one version of a report. We also have other reports. So if I come into my list of reports here and I filter by audit, we also have an audit history report. This actually tracks more detailed information about changes made to records and transactions. So it's really expanding on that audit event report. So just to take a quick look at this, if I wanted to run this, and maybe we can run this for 10/1 to 10/17 and take a look. this one is organized by user. So if I scroll down, and I'll zoom out in a bit just to show you everything in this report, but we'll see this is showing all of my activities. If we scroll down to the bottom, it gets into Kayla's activities, gets into Mike and Patty's activities. So this is an audit event report by user. And what we're seeing here is just more detail than that audit event report. So we're seeing user, object data area, action, access date, but then additional details like field name, field after, field before, notes, a record URL. So just a more expanded version of that report we took a look at a second ago. And then this audit history by object data area report, similar to the audit history by user report, except it's organized by object data area. So if I wanted to run this maybe just for today, I'm going to see this is organized by object data area, and it still gives the user, it's just not grouped by user. And if we don't like these versions and we need to move columns around or make slightly different versions, we can always duplicate the versions that were provided by Intacct and make audit versions of our own. So at the end of the day, audit trails throughout Intacct on transactions, on reports, also just general reports that pull together audit information. Great. Again, any questions on the audit trails we can cover in the last 5 to 10 minutes here. So final bullet I want to cover is automating workflows to streamline approvals and financial operations. And one spot that we see this a lot for nonprofits is in their check request process. So a lot of nonprofits that I work with that are moving on to Intacct have a very manual and sometimes still paper process for their departmental folks requesting spend. With Intacct, we have the ability to use the purchasing module to handle this process. So the purchasing module can be used in a lot of different ways. We can certainly use it for obvious uses like creating purchase requisitions or purchase orders. But one way we're going to review today is check requests. So we'll be taking a look at this particular workflow and seeing how this might work for us. So let's say that I am I'm an employee in the IT department, and I want to create a check request for purchasing some sort of office supplies. I have the ability to come into Intacct and create a check request rather than shooting an email over to the accounting team or handing paper over to the accounting team. I can come in, create a check request. If I need to add an attachment, maybe there's a piece of paper that goes along with this that I want to put in the system, I can certainly slide an attachment into this particular document. So let me just pull an attachment here just so we can see this functionality. So I can slide an attachment or attachments into this check request itself. And then I can plug in the details. So what am I purchasing? In this case, I'm purchasing office supplies. I'm in the IT department and I'm purchasing $1,600 worth of office supplies. At this point, I can submit this check request. So if I come back into this check request just to take a look at that audit or that approval audit history, I can click into this approval history, and this is going to show me where this check request is currently sitting. With how I've set this up, I have routed any IT spend to Patty Smith, who is the IT department manager. And it's showing me what's going on here. So this is currently sitting with Patty Smith, and it's in a submitted state. So if I now come into Penny Smith's login, so I'm now logged in as Penny Smith, I can come in and approve transactions here, and I'm going to see a list of all of the transactions that are out here for me to approve. So here's the one I just submitted. Now Penny can come in, review this transaction, decide if she wants to approve or decline it. So maybe she wants to approve this one. Looks good. And now if we come back into my login and we take a look at the list of check requests sitting out here, we're going to see that this check request is now ready for conversion. So what we suggest at this point is that this is where the accounting team can take over and turn this into a bill for payment. So if I'm someone on the accounting team, maybe the AP clerk, I can come in, take this approved check request that at this point has only been sitting with the IT employees and the IT managers, and I can click convert. I can review it, make sure everything's in here that needs to be, and then I can post it. Oh, I need a vendor document number. I can go ahead and post it. And at this point, this bill ends up in my accounts payable module, where the accounting team can now take over and make a payment via ACH or check and continue processing this bill for payment. So the idea here is just to move away from more manual processes of emails or paper and get our departmental folks into this system, creating check requests. And like I said, that's just one example of how we can use this module, but we'll see various examples here: purchase requisitions, supplies requisitions, the ability for a departmental user to access Intacct, or for a departmental user to access Intacct, they only need a limited employee user license, which is priced much lower than your accounting finance folks. And the idea here is to do things like this, have them in the system and have them take ownership of things like check requests or purchase requisitions. Great. That wraps on our demo portion. And let me just pull up one last thing here. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Michelle. So just to wrap here, outside of the features we saw in the demo, some other reasons that nonprofit orgs might choose Intacct: real-time reporting on the right there. So all of the reporting and dashboarding that you viewed, the second that a transaction is posted or approved, if you have approvals turned on, all those reports and dashboards show that financial activity real time. There's not that concept of sweeps or waiting to see activity in your reports. Also, budgeting and planning, inter-entity automation, we covered that today. And the other thing I covered in a prior webinar a couple months ago is grant management. So there's a robust grants module in Intacct that many of our nonprofits are utilizing to manage their grants. Great. I think if you jump to the next slide, Michelle, it just should be questions. Awesome. Okay, I have one question here. Are audit history reports all custom reports? I don't see them under the company application. So you should see an audit event report. If you're looking for some of the other reports that I mentioned, you should be able in your custom reports to see audit history reports. So if you go to reports, all custom reports, there should be audit history reports out there. And then one other question I got here was, when I was showing reporting and dashboarding, I was only filtering by single entities. We can also filter by groups of entities. So real quick here, Michelle, can I go ahead and steal the screen share from you to answer this one? So let me jump back into here. So the question was, when I'm running a dashboard, for example, like this CFO dashboard, I filtered by a single entity like foundation. But if I wanted to filter by multiple entities, let's say I wanted to see both foundation and community center, I can do that. I just first need to create a location group. So I can come in and say maybe foundation and community center. I can come in and say, I want to go ahead and select specific members. Maybe that's the foundation and the community center, foundation and community. So now when I come into any report or dashboard, like the one I was just in, there's my foundation and community center group. I can apply that. And now I'm able to view reporting for both the foundation and community center. Great. Michelle, you could go back to screen share. Any other questions at the moment about anything I showed today? I'm not seeing any that I missed aside from those two. Great. Well, we appreciate everyone joining today's webinar. And if you want to learn more about Sage Intacct for your NFP or schedule a personalized demo, you can always reach out to us at inquire@compudata.com. And like I said, we'll be sending out this recording and a copy of the slides. All right. Thank you all so much for joining today.